Hey, we're here immediately following Broner Vargas. Great night of boxing overall from the Barclays Center. Immediate thoughts?
We got a couple things answered with exclamation points, and then we got one question mark. So that's kind of my reaction.
Okay,
to
I guess
what went
we'll fill in some of the details of what that means in a bit. So, thoughts on Broner Vargas. So, how did you have it scored to start with?
Okay, so that would be a question mark. I'm generally shooting pictures during it, so I had Broner up 2 going into it. And again, I have to go and rewatch it, but that was just simply because I feel like from about like 5th or 6th on, whether or not he was being forced to by Vargas, he was letting his hands go and landing. You know, he was actually effectively damaging him, which was shown, you know, by his eye. So I had him up going in. I did feel he needed the last round to kind of like cement it, and that did, I think, ultimately wind up being what cost him a draw.
Yeah, just speaking of the score, I had it 115, 113. Right? Am I doing the math correctly? Yeah.
Yeah.
I have for Vargas. So
Okay.
I could have seen, I had plenty of swing rounds. I could have seen it as wide as Julie Letterman's card for Broner, although that would have been an extreme swing. I felt more like it was a narrow win for Vargas. The main thing in terms of the scoring that it came down to was the last few rounds there was so little activity.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it was really a question of who do you want to score it for, because so little activity for neither really, you know, earned it. So, you know, do you like the narrative that Broner has worn out Vargas, Vargas has thrown out the effect of Broner's power punches have added up, something to that effect, so like, you know, that has resulted in this lack of activity, then you'd maybe credit it for Broner? Or do you say that, you know, Broner's just dropped off too much, he's not doing enough to earn these rounds? So very interesting, but man, what a good fight. I mean,
Yes.
really good fight early on. I mean, so here's a question. What did you think of Vargas's body punches early on? I was really impressed with the body work he was doing. Those jabs to the body early on, the body work. I thought there was a chance early on that Vargas might take over and Broner might never get back in. I mean, he was really being so aggressive with that body work. Interesting with Mike McCallum, the body snatcher, in his corner for the second fight. That really seemed to show up. And then I was amazed that it seemed later on Vargas was the one who dropped off, that it seems he was more hurt by that super activity early on than Broner was by the body work. I really wasn't expecting that. How did you see that dynamic playing out? Were you thinking about that when it happened, or did you see those early rounds differently?
I liked his aggressiveness. Because that's what you kind of have to do to Broner. Like, you have to maul him. Volume works with him because he has so little volume nowadays. I don't know what's up with that, but so little volume that he, you know, puts his offense on layaway, and you could take rounds just through activity, even though I know we're not supposed to score off that. But, you know, activity is achievement when the other guy's not throwing. So I thought he did good body work. He did a lot of little things as far as like just locking Broner up, just leaning on him, just making the fight a little bit messy, a little bit dirty. And then just at the end, it just kind of flipped on him. I do feel, I forget which round, maybe 6 or 7, and again, don't hold me to it because I have to rewatch it, but one round, Vargas came out really flat. I was like, okay, where's the punches? Where's the volume, you know, that he'd been doing? And I thought he may be gassed. And I'd have to go back and look at it, but I feel like his activity was peaking, kind of plateaued, and then it fell off at some point all the way down. And I don't know if it's due to the eye or what, but his activity definitely dropped way off. So maybe all that, you know, energy was expelled, and that's why Broner came on.
Yeah, I mean, you touched on another thing there, speaking about the eye. I'm assuming you're referring to the cut. Yeah, I mean, Vargas's face was a mess. I got to see him right up close there. For security reasons, I guess, there was no post-fight press conference, so he and Broner came right up to press row. I was fortunate enough to have a good seat, so like they stood right in front of Dan Rayfield and Keith Idek, and I was like right next to them, so I got to see them right up close. And yeah, Vargas's face was a mess. Broner looked great. I mean, part of that has to do with, you know, the darker skin. It doesn't show up as much, but you have to think that impacted the judges as well. But so I have to say, first off, just to go back a little bit, you didn't see the scores as being controversial in any way, right? If you had it for Broner, I mean, that seems solid, right?
Yeah, I'm okay with the draw. I feel like it was a tale of 2 fights almost, 2 halves in a fight, and I'm okay with the draw. I don't think it's a robbery either way, for the most part.
Yeah. I thought it was probably fine. The press row definitely leaned in the direction that I had it scored, which was for Vargas by a couple of rounds.
Okay. I could see that.
That seemed to be the general consensus press row. There were people I talked to who had it for Broner. So definitely anyone who wants to say this was a robbery, I mean, I feel like that's completely unfair.
Yeah. Would you want to see it again? That's a question.
I would love to see this fight again.
You would? Okay.
I would absolutely love to see this fight again because I want to see, I mean, it's always a question when you have a fight like this where one fighter is dominant at the beginning and another fighter seems to come on later. Not a perfect example of this, but Leo Santa Cruz Frampton.
Okay.
The first fight, I'd say most people scored it clearly for Frampton. I was here. Were you?
Yeah, I was here.
Yeah, you were here live
just
as well.
in the
yeah, it was
crowd,
before the Sunday Puncher days.
Yeah.
Interestingly, it's amazing how fast all this stuff has happened.
Yeah.
But great fight. And I think most people thought Frampton won clearly, but Santa Cruz seemed to be winning towards the end. He seemed to have made the right adjustments. So I pretty confidently picked Santa Cruz in the rematch, even though Vargas had won. And, you know, Frampton had won the fight. So this one is an interesting one because it's like those early rounds really set up, you know, the first 4 rounds set up the remaining 8, in my opinion. You know, Vargas did great body work, but he also was like way too active, probably more than he needed to be to win those rounds. Instead of just, you know, fighting at a level just to win them and leaving it at that, he really seemed to overdo it. But meanwhile, Broner really came on late. So yeah, that's the thing. If they do a rematch, does it look like, you know, is Vargas able to make adjustments? Does it look like just the second half of the fight is all 12 rounds and Broner maybe even stops him?
Well, Vargas will have more notice because he wasn't the original opponent for this date. So he is somewhat
and he had to
really
come.
late,
That's another thing we didn't talk about.
Late.
He had to come down from 147.
Yeah,
he's fought at 147 his last few fights. Although he has been kind of a 140 to 147, kind of a tweener, sort of like Broner. I mean, if you look at their box recs, they're fought at very similar weights. But Broner was expecting a fight at 140. Vargas was expecting a fight at 147. Which that's an interesting dynamic too.
Yeah, if they do it again, will they do it at a catch? If they don't do it at a catch, I don't think Vargas can boil down to 140. I feel that would have him coming out real flat, real gassed at some point in time. So, or do they do it at full 147? And will Vargas be able to bully Broner enough to just totally stop him? Because I feel like within the first 6 rounds, like there were a couple times I don't know. It's hard to tell sometimes when Broner's really hurt, but I feel like Vargas had him.
Vargas definitely hurt him a few times.
Yeah.
I thought. I mean, he landed, you know, a big right hand or a left hook and had Broner change his posture. You know, you didn't see him wobbling necessarily, but you know, it seemed to impact him. Yeah, that's a really good question. I mean, you know, what weight would it be at, and what weight is in store for both guys? Because 140 is pretty wide open, at least in terms of star potential. There's no really big name there. You know,
Mikey
could
dropped
Broner
the belt, right?
come down? Yeah. Mikey dropped the belt, so I mean, Broner has that loss, but Mikey's no longer there. Crawford's no longer there. So I mean, if Broner wanted to go there, he would definitely be the big money fight. You know, he would be in the driver's seat in terms of the money in that division. I don't think you would automatically say he's the best because, like, Regis Prograis has really, really impressed me. You know, he's got another fight lined up. So Jose Ramirez, right, is the name of the guy at Top Rank. He's mandated. I mean, there's a whole thing happening at 140. So the question is, though, but again, if Broner went down, he would be in the driver's seat money-wise. He could, you know, dictate who he fights, you know, pick guys off when he wants to. He could potentially do a campaign there. Still think he's not really going to cut it at 147.
No.
Meanwhile, Vargas could come back, and, you know, he's one of the few guys who's actually said he'd take a Spence fight. He was supposed to fight. We thought he was going to fight Keith Thurman this spring. He didn't. That fight's still there for him. It's looking like Danny Garcia and Sean Porter will fight each other, but he could fight, you know, the winner or loser of that. I mean, Vargas, you know, is pretty messed up. He's not going to be back super fast, so he could have a fall. I could see a fall fight against any of those 4 guys on the PBC side. He's not going to make 140, so I could see those fights or Broner. So it's a good picture for them. Do you have any final thoughts on Broner Vargas?
No, that was in my previous reference. That was the question mark. All those were question marks of where do these guys go and what weight, and do people want to see it again. So, but interesting battle. Like, I was not expecting to see a war tonight, or somewhat close to a war.
Oh yeah, that was the big shocker. I don't think anyone saw that outcome coming. Yeah, really interesting. I mean, one last thing I want to say, I was really surprised at Broner's power. I don't know if I should have been, I thought if anyone was going to have really successful power shots, it was going to be Vargas with the overhand right.
Yep.
And he did land a few of those, but
and Vargas is a taller, heavier guy. So
Right, exactly. You'd think how that weight dynamic is going to work, it's like you think, oh, maybe it's going to hurt Vargas on the stamina side, but it would help him in the power side. And it was, I did not expect Broner to have such a big power advantage. That was really interesting. Very excited. I mean, I've been waiting for Broner to grow up for his whole career, and I've never been, seemed to be a great fit with Kevin Cunningham. He seemed to have a really good camp, seemed to be in good shape. I think as far as the fight tapering out later on, that had more to do with Vargas's body work early than Broner being out of shape.
Yes.
I'm excited to see both guys. I think it elevated both guys.
Yeah, and generally when you change generally it seems like when you change a coach, like it takes a couple fights. I don't expect to see a drastic change first fight. So probably a little bit of change. Maybe in 2 fights we see a little bit different Broner. So.
Yeah, and just quick shout out to Mike McCallum with Vargas as well. Vargas' second fight with Mike McCallum. Great body work from him in this fight. I mean, it's one of those things like whenever you have like a fighter who becomes a trainer, the first thought is always, when he's training this fighter, they're going to take on this attribute of that. And rarely does that happen, but man, great body work from Vargas in this fight. So, maybe that is Mike McCallum impressing that on him. I really don't remember Vargas being that effective with the body work. I mean, those jabs to the bodies are early, and then later on the power shots to the body.
Thudding.
Yeah, I mean, he really believed in that, and, it really did sap Broner late. So, I mean, it had an effect, but very, very interesting fight. So moving on to the other.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's talk about Gervonta Davis. Big win tonight.
Yeah.
How did you see it coming in, and versus how did it go? Versus how it ended up playing out in practice.
I guess I can't say I predicted he would just kind of blaze through Cuellar like that. I do know he's really talented. I do know when he applies himself, he, like versus Pedraza, he can do amazing things that you don't expect. And I definitely didn't expect it to be body that took his opponent out. Even though I know Tank, short, low center of gravity, like he, body work is kind of his thing, but still that was crazy. The 3 knockdowns, like in almost succession over the course of 3 rounds. That was just an amazing show. So he shows he's super talented, called out. He wants a winner of Farmer for that vacant belt. I want to see it. So that was one of the exclamation points I mentioned earlier.
Yeah, Tevin Farmer versus Gervonta Davis, or the winner, I guess.
Yeah, the winner.
Farmer's
I'll
fight.
say winner. Yeah.
That's a great fight. I mean, Davis, won a belt tonight. He looked amazing. I mean, it was everything you want to see out of Gervonta Davis with his form, using the angles, the hand speed to set up those power shots, and oh man, what devastating power shots!
Yep.
I mean, coming
footwork.
Yeah, great. I mean, coming in, I think it's pretty clear the question in this fight is, we know Jesus Cuellar. He's a very specific fighting style, very aggressive. The question is that aggression going to allow him to dog Davis? He's also, let's say, a more proven, much more experienced, much older fighter. Is that maturity and aggression going to allow him to dog Davis and prevent Davis from really getting his game plan laid out, or is that aggression going to completely work against him and it's going to allow Tank to set up his power shots? And it absolutely ended up being the latter. I mean, Cuellar came out like a freight train in the first round, landed some good shots in the first 30 seconds, but it didn't take long at all for Davis to hurt him and send him back, moving backwards. And, in the second round, he tried to come out again, but, even he got deterred even faster. And he really had no plan B at all.
Yeah.
So I like Gervonta Davis. I think people have been too unfair with how they judged his performance over the summer on the Mayweather-McGregor undercard. He missed weight. That's really, inexcusable, and it's been, well discussed that he has problems outside of the ring. But Seems to be a good fit with Kevin Cunningham. He came in a full pound under the limit to try to make a statement that he's back and he's dedicated. I think this was a little bit of a favorable style matchup for him, so I hesitate to, give him super amount of credit, but Tevin Farmer, that'd be great. I mean, Tevin Farmer's a slickster, couldn't be more of a different style than what Jesus Cuellar brought, so if Tevin Farmer wins that fight, they've been beefing on social media, well, and in real life, by the way. There's some good videos on YouTube for a while, so I'd love that fight. I'm excited about his career. He's only 23, the sky's the limit. And, Lomachenko's at 135 now. Davis is making 130 comfortably. Let's wait a little bit on that fight. I think it's kind of unfair for people to be saying the 23-year-old needs to fight Lomachenko right now, who's, been through 2 Olympics. He's been through the World Series of Boxing. It doesn't make any sense. Obviously, right now, it favors Lomachenko to do that fight now, but there's no reason Davis needs to fight him now. They're now in 2 different divisions. Just let that chill out. Davis has some good fights in front of him. I mean, he had a giant... Were you surprised at how big of a crowd reaction he got?
Yes.
He sold some tickets tonight for sure.
Definitely. Maryland was in the house because it. I know you guys can't see, but this place, the lower bowl, was completely full. We do a lot of fights here, and there's a lot of empty seats.
The most nosebleeds I've ever seen sold. Normally, the lower bowl, not to sell out, but those tickets fill up. The nosebleeds don't as much because it's boxing. You don't have as good of a view of the ring, but. Cheaper seats sold out too, which to me shows some grassroots. It wasn't just like the wealthier New York boxing crowd.
And if you think about it, there's no New York cats on this card. Like it's people, Ohio,
no one
Texas,
based in New York.
Maryland's close. You can get up here on train and drive, but AB's always he's a draw anywhere, but he's a draw here. But this place was packed, and they were super super loud for Tank, and he gave them what they wanted.
So after moving on to the next fight, Gervonta Davis blew the top off the Barclays Center. The crowd loved it. Blew out Jesus Cuellar in 3 rounds. We thought, how can Jamal Charlo top this? Do you think he topped it? How would you rate his performance?
I'm always a little bit not personally biased against the Charlos, but as from the Lubin fight to whenever I try to go shoot or cover these guys, I'm always generally trying to hurry up and throw something up about Tank or whatever, and snap, it's already over. They're scary. It's scary how fast and how abrupt it comes, and you can understand.
Editing the pictures from the first fight, and then you lose the next fight.
Yeah, exactly.
I forgot about
literally chance. The Lubin one.
The Lubin fight was 1 minute and 30 seconds.
Yeah, it's little. I'm starting to get my groove and everything, but these guys are scary. And if it happens once, twice, you can maybe call it a fluke. But the way that you just mow through people regardless of what you think about the competition, still is a professional fighter, and still is somebody that should put up some sort of resistance. So I think he's ready to just hop to world class. I don't think that's a reach. Whereas Tank, I would want, due to age and experience and whatever, he's just at a different, as you mentioned, he's just at a different stage in his career than Aloma or whatever. Both with, in and out of ring maturity. But Charlo, he's there. He's ready. I want to see something. I'm just worried that the Triple G Canelo saga, the dragging out of it due to the PED pop and the suspension and the whatever. Triple G just seems to be chasing Canelo for the longest time. So Charlo, I don't know. I want to try to explore. Maybe you have ideas on options that he could explore besides those 2.
Yeah, I mean, that's an interesting way to frame it, because what's next? You know? I mean, I think something that I think is definitely the case for Jamal Charlo specifically, he is kind of, abstract, but he's kind of in the same position Triple G was 3 years ago. The top guys don't want to fight him. I think he would happily take a fight with Billy Joe Saunders, Canelo for sure, Triple G for sure. I mean, at this point, I think Jacobs as well, you'd have to say. If they do that fight, I don't think you'd turn that down at all.
Yeah.
And if they don't want it, you kind of win every argument. If he has to fight bad at competition to stay active, well, okay, the other guys are avoiding him. So I think that's the thing I've really come to learn following boxing over the last few years, that, like, thinking back, Danny Garcia, this is, again, I know I'm a little bit of a rabbit hole here, but Danny Garcia kind of blew up his brand when his dad said, why would we fight a tough guy when we can fight, an easier guy for almost the same amount of money? Yeah. You can't really, it's like when you reveal the script like that, it kind of, then you don't have the plausibility to fight bad opponents. But, if Jermall Charlo doesn't get a Canelo fight, doesn't get a Triple G fight, and has to fight the best of what's left for the next 2 or 3 years, you know what? He's going to knock those guys out, and he's just going to become more of a boogeyman. Yeah. They're not going to be dangerous fights. So it's actually kind of an enviable situation to be in. Yeah. I think it's kind of hard to judge. I mean, how many people he brought in tonight. The Charlo brothers always get a big reaction here. Jermell does, and Jermall as well. It wasn't as specific as Tank's crowd, because, I think those were specifically people who drove up. I mean, I don't think as many people came up from Texas, so we didn't get that same crazy reaction. But
would you want to see him with what's that cat's name? Derevchenko?
Oh yeah, that's a good. So that's the best thing to ask, because they're both with the PBC, but I think they're both circling Triple G's belts.
Yeah.
I think it's more likely we'll see them both stay in those title pictures, just fight whoever the sanctioning bodies tell them to, more so than them fighting each other.
Yeah. Because they cancel each other out.
Yeah.
Or one will cancel the other out, and I get it from a business standpoint. That might not be the best thing to feed your guys to each other.
Derevchenko. I'm not going to say this right. I'm sorry. It's not even that hard of a name. I'm missing some syllables. But, I mean, he's got a strong case for that IBF belt. I believe it's the IBF. I don't know. It's the post-fight reaction.
Yeah.
I don't,
Yeah. No, I think it's the IBF because they're trying to get Triple G stripped of it.
So, I don't think he's going to fight anyone unless it's like he doesn't need a fight with Jermall Charlo on, a Showtime undercard that badly. I think both of them are more likely. Probably, I mean, I could see one. Derevchenko hasn't even really made it to the Showtime level, but I could see him continuing to fight on Showtime undercard, or coming up to the Showtime undercards. Probably same thing with Jermall Charlo. I mean, it's interesting with the PBC approach to the thing. I mean, tonight you had none of these fights were really home runs, but you had 3 very solid fights, and together you got a huge crowd in the Barclays Center. Probably it'll do good ratings. I mean, there seemed to be a good reaction online to the fight card. So, I think they'll probably both just stay in the just stay in those lanes for those belts. It's probably the most likely thing. Continue to get impressive wins over probably second level competition. I mean, and see what happens. I mean, that is the thing. I mean, all of the money is concentrated in Canelo and Triple G.
Yep.
So it's like everyone's doing what they can to either get one of their belts through attrition and just gaining it by those fighters not defending their mandatories, or possibly winning the lotto and getting one of those fights. And I think the pressure will be on from the press. I mean, a lot of the press has been very vocal saying, why didn't Triple G fight Derevchenko? The fight was there. He's his mandatory. It's, you don't get to be the baddest man on the planet if you're saying, oh, this guy's too tough to fight on a month's notice.
Yes.
And, he's fighting Vanes, who hasn't fought in 2 years. He's coming up in weight class. So, I think the pressure will be on eventually. I mean, I posted a video on Facebook this week of Jermall Charlo, and I just posed it with the topic, how does he do against Triple G and Canelo? I personally think he beats both. I said personally, I wasn't super aggressive about it, but got super. I mean, the Canelo and Triple G fanboys were so triggered by that. They did not want to hear Jermall Charlo's name. Yeah. And then some other more even-handed people are like, yeah, those are great fights. Or, there's also the growing Charlo crowd who said, I agree with you. He's bigger, he's faster, he's possibly more powerful. I mean, what is there not to like about this guy? I mean,
exactly. And the funny thing, I feel like this was the same position that Triple G was in years ago, where it was nobody wanted to face him. If you said, oh, Triple G versus somebody, they'd be like, oh, no, it's not, that's not going to happen, or he doesn't have a shot and whatnot. Yeah. So Charlo's now in that position, but the whole Triple G not facing his mandatory, I see the vision in the okay, we just got to make it this September, fight Canelo, and that's our primary focus. But with his hashtag all the belts, I do think he's holding up everybody. That fight, it's frustrating to me because it's okay, this fight, if it had just had not been a draw either way, or if we just had a resolution to this fight, or in a month, in May or whatever.
Yeah, we don't even get that. We don't even get the
whole division could
now.
move on. Yeah, the whole division could move on. We could split up all the belts like Infinity Stones, and people could go grab them. But now we're just in this holding pattern until, and as you said, it makes sense. Like for Charlo and Derevchenko, and again, sorry for murdering his name again. It makes sense for them to just stay in their own lanes and then just keep waiting until we have some sort of resolution among those two at the top, and then they throw their name or their hat in the ring and make a run at it. But I lived in Texas a long time. I went to school in Texas. I am biased, but I do like Charlo, especially he got J-Rock. I like J-Rock, so I was like, okay, maybe J-Rock will give him a test, and that was
J-Rock
not.
looked good in his last fight, by the way. So, I mean...
Yeah, he looked good, but not... I don't know.
That's another conversation.
Whole another video.
Yeah, we've already gone for 25 minutes. Yeah, I don't need to
I could go off about J-Rock for forever, but I do think it would be tough. Canal, I don't know how it would go, but I feel like he could get it. And then with Triple G, there's just not that many dimensions to Triple G's kind of game, and I think Charlo does a lot of things that Triple G does well too, but you just add in youth, add in more athleticism, and then I think just those two things, and add in the hunger. I feel like a very human-looking Triple G that we've seen it could be beatable. You know, he's not the boogeyman. I think it's Charlo. So
yeah. Okay, I think that's it. We've gone on way longer than we planned to. So, signing off here. It's a great night of boxing.
Yeah, peace. SundayPuncher.com.
Sunday Puncher. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. Check out our coverage on Reddit. SundayPuncher.com.